Alright, so pretty much now until the trade deadline, any content from me outside of post-game videos is probably going to be solely focused on trades, mock trades, trade rumors, etc. And it's actually surprising to me that outside of Trae Young getting traded to the Wizards, we have yet to see a single trade, unless I'm missing any. Like, yes, the bulk of trades happen in the days and hours leading up to the deadline, the bulk of them happening the day of, but even by now you would see some minor trades here and there, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that teams are all kind of waiting to see what could potentially happen with Giannis. Like, I don't think people are convinced when he tries to act like he's going to do whatever he can to make this work and will never request a trade out of Milwaukee, especially when the Bucks really haven't made any progress in the standings, still sitting 11th in the East, losing to some bad teams, almost blew a 20-point lead the other night against the Hawks. I'm sure a lot of GMs are being cautious with their assets in the event Giannis suddenly pivots and demands a trade, but in any event, no big trades at the time of this recording anyway. But as we get closer to that deadline, I've of course been playing around with the trade machine, seeing what's possible for the Bulls in the event they actually make a trade. And so for this video in particular, I'm actually looking at 4 trades that would potentially make sense for the Bulls. 4 trades that solely focus on bringing in young-ish players, young players with experience and some potential upside, which we know has been the focus and the MO of this front office since pivoting from the previous roster iteration. And I'm going to go over these trades, and what I would love to hear is from you in the comments, your reaction to them. How ridiculous are they? Which team would say no? Roast me, I can take it. So what's going on, everyone? You're listening to Bulls Central here. Hope you're all doing well. Now, when I think about the Bulls and how they're going to be approaching this trade deadline, I can only go off of how they have recently started putting together this roster, meaning instead of tearing the whole thing down, rebuilding, tanking, accumulating as many future assets as they possibly can, they've insisted to try to do this thing where they've gone younger. You've gotten rid of some of your older veterans, except for Vucevic, of course, and they've pursued young players that still have upside, but have a fair amount of experience in the league, right? Trading for Josh Giddey, who was already a proven player, a proven starter on one of the best teams in the Western Conference, but only 21 years old at the time of the trade, and still had some growth and potential that has been realized since his OKC days. Trading for Isaac Okoro, another young player, but young player with experience on a winning team. Signing guys like Jalen Smith in free agency, former lottery selection, also another guy in his early 20s that hadn't quite entered his prime yet when they signed him. Re-signing Tre Jones, another young-ish player. Like, it's pretty clear, and we can argue whether this is the right approach to take, but for the Bulls, rather than trying to all-out tank and build through the draft, are trying to focus on bringing in young but more established players and building that way. So because of that, in these trades that I'm about to go over, it's going to be reflected in how I believe the Bulls are currently operating. So you're not going to see any major sell-off type trades where the Bulls are trying to dump players and accumulating draft picks, but rather making trades to go a little younger and pursuing players that aren't getting prioritized on their current team, maybe on the trade block, or just all-out guys who are disgruntled and don't want to be on their respective teams anymore. And I'm going to start with this trade. Man, the more I think about it, actually, people are going to call me crazy for all these. But in this one, and it's actually the first 2 trades, but both of them are going to be involving moving on from Coby White. And the first one is with the Minnesota Timberwolves, who have been reported as a team that have shown interest in Coby White to beef up their backcourt a bit with Anthony Edwards. And because the Timberwolves don't have any tradable first-round picks to send out to the Bulls, which is what the Bulls want in a Coby deal, the Timberwolves are actually going to be giving us something close to it. In this case, a player that was just recently drafted in 2024, taken with the 8th overall pick, before modest by the way, in Rob Dillingham. Mike Conley is included in this, really a salary filler, and it's an expiring contract, so they don't have to worry about keeping his money on the books long term. Although, having a veteran point guard like Mike Conley, a standout leader, and a great locker room presence could actually be a great mentor and veteran voice for these young players, even if it's only for a few months on the team. But the real return in this trade is Rob Dillingham. Some people might say it's crazy. Why would the Wolves give up one of their youngest players, a guy they traded to move up in the draft to get? Why would they give up on him so quickly? Well, it's because he's barely seen the floor since he joined that team. Timberwolves are in win now mode. They have no future picks. They know this is it. They know they need guys that are ready to compete now. And Dillingham just isn't ready yet. And so to send Dillingham to a team that is going to have more use for him, that is going through a youth movement and well, you would hope anyway, is going to prioritize his development. And for the Bulls, while you're downgrading in talent in the short term, what you're gaining is not being on the clock to give Kobe a fat contract extension. You're on a more cost-controlled contract with Dillingham still on his rookie scale deal, not due for an extension for a couple more years, and a player that's 4 years younger with a lot of upside. Now, could Dillingham end up being a bust? Sure, it's possible, especially when his first couple of years in the league have been pretty underwhelming, but also I don't think we can sit here and say that he's really been put in the right environment to give him the most opportunities and the development that he needs. The next one with Kobe, and I actually feel is more realistic than people are going to think. Just a couple years ago, or actually maybe it was last season, but there was of course the talk about the Pistons being interested in Zach LaVine, and Jaden Ivey was the name that came up most often as a potential player that could come to Chicago in that transaction. But at that time, it seemed somewhat unrealistic that the Bulls could get a young, rising star player in Ivey for a distressed asset in LaVine, who was on a max contract. But given the struggles he's had with injuries, meaning Jaden Ivey, the fact that we've seen rises from Jalen Duren, of course, Cade Cunningham, Ausar Thompson, it seems like Ivey could end up being the odd man out for the Pistons, especially when we know Detroit can't pay all of these guys. So for the Pistons, they obviously need more on-ball creation and shooting, which Kobe gives them. I think the reason they would hesitate to do this trade a little bit is that it means having to pay Kobe White, and do they want to commit to him long term? For the Bulls, I don't like this trade as much as the one involving Dillingham, even though Ivey is a more established player and is shown to be a proven scorer, but he is 2 years older, and he's set to hit restricted free agency this summer, which puts you on the clock and figuring out an extension now rather than giving you a couple seasons to see what you have in Rob Dillingham. But Jaden Ivey, when healthy, is a stud. Super athletic, good instincts on offense. His three-point shooting is a bit down this year, but he actually shot over 40% on three on over 5 attempts per game last year. I would be intrigued by this one as a return for Kobe White if the Bulls aren't able to get a first-round pick for him in return. Moving away from Kobe White for a minute, and more so now looking at Vucevic, who I'm sure the Bulls are overvaluing on the trade market as a veteran big that could help a contender. This one is probably the most unrealistic of them all, but I feel like this could actually work out for both teams again, making assumptions on what each of the teams is trying to do. And that's the Bulls trading the expirings of Vucevic, Kevin Huerter, and 2 first-round picks, one of the picks being the lottery-protected pick from Portland, and the Bulls' own pick in 2030 for Jaren Jackson Jr. Now, of course, this assumes the Grizzlies do in fact decide to tear everything down, which is a possibility, by the way. Ja Morant could still very well be traded. And if they do trade Ja, you have to think it makes the most sense for them to also move on from Jaren Jackson Jr. They already traded away Desmond Bane and got quite the haul for him, I might add, from Orlando in the form of 4 first-round picks. How's that working out for the Magic, by the way? They already are on the path and positioning themselves to acquire even more future assets if they trade Ja and Jaren Jackson Jr. as well. So taking on a couple expiring contracts to give them cap relief and moving out of Jackson's deal makes sense, and they're also compensated with a couple of picks, one not being as valuable in the Portland pick, especially if it never conveys, and then the Bulls pick, at least for the Bulls' sake, us fans anyway, we hope that pick isn't that high in 2030, but I'm sure most organizations see the Bulls' history and they think that could be a very juicy pick down the line. And then for the Bulls, for Jaren Jackson Jr.'s flaws, and yes, he's not having the best season this year, but you're getting a star-level player in his prime. I know it seems like he's been in the league forever, but he's only 26 years old. He's one of the best defensive bigs in the game, former Defensive Player of the Year, 3-time All-Defensive Team player, but also a legit offensive player as well. That is a lob threat, rim-running center, but also has really developed his outside game over the last couple of seasons. We keep talking about how the Bulls need a legit defensive big man, a true rim protector, and Jaren Jackson Jr. fits the bill for that. And yes, again, this assumes the Bulls are still going with the direction of trying to win now and bringing in young, talented, established players. The question is this enough for the Grizzlies to get it done? Maybe not, but I think the negotiation lever on the Bulls side is, hey, we're taking on 5 years left of his contract where you're going to be paying him over $53 million in 2030. We're taking on a risk ourselves, so we feel 2 first-round picks is more than fair. And then finally, the obligatory Jonathan Kuminga trade. I know some people are going to think this one is crazy. Why would the Warriors ever do a straight trade of Jonathan Kuminga for Nikola Vucevic if it doesn't include picks? Look, the time for the Warriors to secure picks for Kuminga is over. That ship sailed when you started giving him DMPs and creating all this locker room drama, because now people are going to be wary of trading for Kuminga if they think there are some red flags that the Warriors aren't letting people know about. Like, the talent is there. He's a young player who hasn't entered his prime yet. You had this contentious offseason trying to get a contract worked out with him, and yet he can't see the floor. It's a very weird situation. The Warriors tanked his value, and rather than losing him for nothing by declining the team option on the second year of his deal, which they likely would do anyway, trade for Vucevic, who is having a solid season. It's an expiring contract, so you don't have to commit to him beyond this season, or you can re-sign him to a more team-friendly deal, get rid of old man Al Horford. You finally bring in an actual big man that can rebound, space the floor, and is a decent passing hub on offense. So no, I don't think this trade is as absurd or out of the question as most people probably think. And for the Bulls, well, I don't like the fit of Kuminga. I've been saying this all the way back to last season. I'm not really high on this guy. Super athletic and a talented player, but low IQ and awareness on the court isn't what I like to see, similar to Zach LaVine if I'm being honest. But if it's a scenario where you're buying low and taking a flyer on the guy that could have some big upside, and all you have to do is trade Vucevic, who wasn't going to be part of your long-term plans anyway, yeah, why not? Especially when Kuminga's contract is effectively an expiring deal, when you just can decline his team option and let him walk in free agency if it doesn't work out, or if it does work out, decline the team option, extend him to a more favorable annual amount but for a longer term. So anyway, those were the trades I concocted. Not sure I see any of these happening, but still found them interesting nonetheless. Give it to me straight. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. As always, be sure to subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.